Awesome. Welcome everybody to the Gilder Spotlight podcast. I'm super excited for today's guest. My name is Sher Downing, but Sher, I'd like to have you give a background of yourself to our audience.
Always fun. So, hi everybody. I'm Sher Downing. I've been in the EdTech industry for about the last 20 years since its inception, and I've been in higher education and corporate training for 35 years, focusing really on how people learn. So, very excited to be here today.
Awesome. Well, I just want to take a step back. Where are you originally from, Sher, and what got you into education?
Sure. So, originally grew up in the Midwest, and got into college and was trying to figure out kind of what direction I wanted to go. Was actually working in what we now call hospitality management, and got the opportunity to start working in education and what we called back then distance education, which was correspondence courses, mailing things, all of that kind of good stuff. And at that point, then the technology started in. We were just getting into, and I know this sounds like, I'm a dinosaur, but we were just getting into the World Wide Web. We're starting to get into the internet, and I was fascinated by it. So, working in higher ed, I was able to be in the college and university setting, but start to really work into the technology side of it and the growth and the adoption of tools and software really at the inception of a lot of major products now that were betas and V1s at that time. So I just instinctively, I'm a nerd. So I love learning all sorts of new things. I love testing new things. I love trying new things. I'm not afraid to press the button. A lot of people are just like, oh, I don't want to break it. I press it. I want to know what's going to happen. So, was fortunate enough to build a career in academia and in corporate training, utilizing that technology, understanding and learning how people are learning through this methodology. Started my company in 2018 and decided to just take all of my knowledge and expertise and put it into consulting and working directly with consumers or with other businesses.
Very cool, Sher. And when you started out, you said that you started your career in higher education. Were you a professor or were you uh, a grade school teacher? Where did you start out?
So I started in working in administration. So I was always working in an administrative role in admissions, any student services area, um, uh, academic advising, those sorts of things. And then
Hmm.
moved on to the academic side and spent a lot of years being dual appointed. So I was administrator, but I was also a faculty member. That gave me the ability to see the business side of operations, but also to be in the classroom and to understand the teaching and learning process. And along
Wow.
the line, went to grad school, finished a master's and a PhD, so that I really could understand online learning, how people
Hmm.
wanted things to be designed, what was best for them. Also did a second master's in legal studies because I wanted to understand really digital media. Where are the issues of intellectual property, copyright? How do we move things electronically? So spending that time really cultivating my skill set and understanding in the classroom, in university and college settings, in corporate training areas where there were companies who were wanting to establish their own really mini universities within themselves to train their employees, to grow their employees, really kind of set the pace for what I do now.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like you have the perfect background for running an ed tech company and understanding the administrative side, also the faculty side, which a lot of, I think, well, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure a lot of people that jump into businesses directly don't have that kind of experience. And also just kind of the timing as well, just when you know, the internet bubble is booming and all these probably different technologies or different methods of teaching changing drastically. It's so interesting because when I was growing up, like it was still, we still use projectors to we'd have like a marker and draw stuff on the projectors and all that stuff. Now I hear schools are teaching like AI and coding and data science and things like that, which is really interesting. Um, how do you think the education system has evolved, and where do you think it's going?
Well, I think it's always interesting to look at it because education always has struggled with being a trendsetter and moving things forward rapidly, keeping people, up to date with their skills and their knowledge base while trying to balance a budget. And so the difficulty is the schools that have budgetary opportunity will adopt things much faster. They'll have more opportunity to gain access to software, to applications and such. And so for a long time, it was hard for schools to keep up. Nowadays, we get a little more opportunity because companies like Google, who partner with K through 12, who do, partnerships with universities, who bring their products into the classroom, who want people to have an understanding and a learning knowledge, really have opened up that ability for people to have access and an opportunity to see things that even today they may not have at home. We still have areas in the US that don't have access to Wi Fi, who are still rural,
Mhm.
who maybe only have access to computers at school. And it's hard to imagine in this day and age, but it is the way it is. Um, so, it's balancing for those people that still don't have everything and those that have the best opportunities, and then seeing education and technology move so rapidly right now. As you
Mhm.
know, things are constantly changing, things are constantly being introduced. The ed tech industry is flourishing with startups and the latest, newest technologies for people to adopt. We all carry around phones that we can download apps and have access to things instantaneously. So, where I see education going is they're finally understanding the adaptation of the schedule and the adaptation of the learning style and the flexibility per student. So rather than teaching to the masses, we're now starting to see where schools are allowing an opportunity for kids to learn on their own basis, on their own interests, where they excel. And so where I see the future of education going is that just continuing to grow and allowing opportunity for individuals as opposed to relying on assigning you a grade and assigning you,
Right.
to move forward as a full cluster or a full cohort. I'm excited because I think students have that opportunity to be what they want to be, learn what they want to learn, be exposed to the different types of things that are out there and get an understanding of what they might do in the future.
Mhm.
And they can often do this from home in a flexible hybrid situation. They may go to a classroom, they may go to an actual site where they can actually practice what they're learning. So I think education is finally moving forward in a way that embraces what's available to students.
That's fantastic to hear. It's so funny when I was like back in high school, I remember even taking like the ACT, and they would encourage us to write that technology is a burden on education and it's bad, but it's in all reality, I think it's just the adoption of the faculty and the teachers understanding it and how to utilize it. Um, so yeah, and so and then in 2018, you said that you started your business. What made you decide to get into entrepreneurship? Why did you transition out of, education into, well, I guess you're still in education, but in entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah. So I was nearing the end of a wonderful career, and I was working in the highest level position I could work in my industry within academia. The next roles became more uh, broad in the sense of oversight of institutions, and it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I had really done everything I wanted to do in that track of career, and so my thought was kind of what's next, and that became more of I could still do all the things that I love, and I could still be embedded with all of the interesting things that are going on, but I could do it in a way that would help those people and those companies that may not always have access to bigger services. So I started Downing EdTech Consulting in 2018. We focus on digital transformation. We work with a lot of small companies. We work with a lot of startups. We work across the industry, so it doesn't matter if you're in education or healthcare, sports, law, whatever it is. We know you have a simple plan. You want to move things online. You want to create hybrid opportunities. You want to ensure that you're doing it well and that you're being successful for your clients. So that was our focus going into it. And then 2019 came and the pandemic started. So we became really focused on rapidly helping people move things over, get things set up, because suddenly the world started shutting down and people had to figure out different ways to provide for their current clients. People that would normally walk in their storefront, come to their office, now suddenly there was no opportunity to do that. So we were fortunate, and we learned a lot in working with a lot of different industries to help them out. Now we're on the post side of it, hopefully continue that. But now we're helping people figure out, do you stay as a hybrid? What do you do with those things that you invested in? How do you shift and give your clientele the best of both worlds? And what's next? What do you do going forward? So, we do a lot of strategic planning. We do a lot of helping people to really reevaluate where they're at and where they want to be going and what helps them in the digital sense of doing that and what makes the most sense, whether they should be doing it or they shouldn't be doing it.
Got it. Yeah, I love what you are doing. It sounds like you're really adapting to all of the current trends, uh, the global pandemic, things like that. I remember when we talked a couple months ago, you kind of have a philosophy that you follow is begin with the end in mind. How did you end up kind of implementing that mantra into your business and into your um, life, just in general?
So I always want to look at where we're going and why we're going there. When we begin with the end in mind, we always say, okay, this is where we want to end up. This is what we want to be doing. Now let's step back and look at what it's going to take to get us there and
Hmm.
why we're going there and how we're going to impact and influence by doing that. So from a business perspective, it's been very easy because we've been able to say, okay, here's our goals, here's where we're going, here's what we want to be known for, here's what we want to provide. We're very focused on relationship building with our clients. We want to be available for them. We want to help them through the process. We don't want to do, massive cold calling of sales and those kinds of
Hmm.
things. We're really all about creating those relationships. So we've kept that in mind all along. And as long as we keep that in mind, we end up doing a lot of referral work. We end up really, having repeat work from our clients. It's really just been the heart of where we're at. And so we know that's where we want to go. We know that's what we want to do. And we're able to back out of that and say, what does it take to do that? It takes, being supportive, having the right tools and technology for them, having the right team members that have training and expertise in certain areas. It takes, understanding what our clients are going through, understanding their business, taking the time to really know what it is that they do in order to be, the best possible help to them. Um, from a personal perspective, it's always what is it that I want the end goal to be? And then I back up and figure out how do I get there? What's that going to take to do that? Um, I first heard that from Stephen Covey, oh gosh, in the late 80s. And it's always stuck with me, beginning with the end in mind. And it's always been advantageous for me because once I set a goal and know what that is and how it should look, backing out of it and figuring out how to get there is fairly simple because I'm not having to reevaluate all the time. I'm not having to reassess where we're going or what we're doing. It's right there.
Wow. Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's a fantastic mantra. Um, and just to kind of go off, you mentioned Stephen Covey. I've read some of his stuff a long time ago. Are there any other kind of influences that have shaped your career into how it is?
I think, you learn from everybody that you talk with. So I've spent years building a network where I have contact with people that are, more experienced than I am, that are in areas that I know well and areas that I don't know much about, because I learn from them. I learn from the process. Making those relationships and understanding their point of view and understanding what they've seen in their experiences is just so valuable. Keeping up on trends, reading constantly, really keeping myself informed has always been a huge piece of what I do, because it not only helps me know what's going on out there, it helps my clients. When they talk about something and I can say, oh, I've read that, I've seen something on that, are you aware this is coming? Those kinds of things are all very important and add value to the relationships when you're
Mhm.
working with them. Even working with other companies, when you have a relationship with another company, if you have a third party contractor working with them, understanding and knowing things allows you to make better choices and better, decision making processes,
Mhm.
rather than someone telling you about something and you really don't understand it. So you may be buying into
What
something you don't really want or need.
what do you recommend? Because I think there's so many different industries evolving, changing. How do you keep up with all of these trends? Because you mentioned that you work with ed tech, sports, health. You're pretty much industry agnostic. So how do you keep up with all these different trends and all these different industries with it rapidly evolving?
So, the first thing I do is I look to what are the major publications that are really acknowledged in those areas. And so I try to find one for each area that really is the top piece that that industry really looks towards. So, for example, in business, people tend to look at Forbes. That's
Hmm.
a big piece for them. Forbes covers a lot of things. Forbes always acknowledges trends, etc. So, whatever your industry is, find those pieces that are the most important to the people that are out there. That's the area to start with, and then from within that, look at who are they citing, who else are they connecting with, and see what's visible there. When I talk with clients, one of the things I always ask them is, what are they reading? What are they looking at? Because
Hmm.
oftentimes I stumble upon something I wasn't aware of was out there, but maybe really, really valuable and provide a lot of feedback. And, the other thing is talking with other people in your industry. Rely on your network. Ask people, what are you reading? What are you looking at? What are you seeing as really being on spot for talking about trends and interests? Or what do you see that's not? There's a lot of stuff out there, as you said, but then the fact is it doesn't really hone in on what you need. It
Hmm.
doesn't really talk about, things correctly. They get kind of at a surface level. So, ask people, what do they rely on and what do they avoid? That's just as important.
Absolutely, yeah, and I couldn't agree more. A question just on a lot of listeners are founders, entrepreneurs. You're working with founders and entrepreneurs all the time. In your eyes, what do you think the most important asset for a founder to have?
I think the most important asset is vision. Um, you will get really bogged down in the weeds with lots of operational pieces and tasks and people telling you it's not going to work and investors turning you down and all of these things that are negative. Um, you have to have that vision and constantly move towards that vision in order to get things up and running. There's nothing more difficult than a founder who's so excited about the next greatest widget in their mind,
Mhm.
but they can't articulate it because they're thinking about the widget is going to solve a problem, a singular problem. They're not thinking about the vision of where is this going to go. Um, I always use the example about when Starbucks came out with a travel stick.
Mhm.
It's the little stick you put in your coffee cup so it doesn't spill. It's a marvelous invention. It's the silliest thing in the world at the same time. You could say it's to use in your coffee mug when you're driving, and that's it. and it's done.
Mhm.
But what you started seeing was people talking more about where they could go now, where they could take their cup with them and not have to worry about it
Yeah.
spilling. And Starbucks did just that. They marketed about you can be on a bus, you can be on here, you can
Mhm.
be. They weren't talking about the stick. They were talking about the opportunity the stick provided. That's the kind of vision you have to have. And if you have that for your product, for your service, no matter what comes in at you, that vision always stays in the forefront. And that's what keeps you going at the best of times and at the worst of times as you're building your business.
Wow. And I'm just reading your bio here, and I see that you've been, top 50 women leaders in Arizona in 2022, and finalist for 2021 Entrepreneur Woman of the Year in IT awards. And I see these awards coming like the past couple of years. Have you always had this type of grit and determination to be, a leader and to go after it, or when you're working kind of, in education in up until 2018? Did you kind of have a shift becoming an entrepreneur yourself? Um, yeah. So how did all this come to be?
I think I've always had the drive and determination on whatever I'm working on. I've always said if I really love something, I'm really interested in it, I do great with it. If I don't enjoy it, it just kind of falls to the wayside. So when I was a kid, if I loved a class, boy, it was great. If I didn't love a class, it was not so good. Um, and so that has always stuck with me. So in academia, you're always part of a team. You're always working towards a lot of things with a lot of other people involved. And so I've always had that drive and that passion, but it's always been to lead my team or to be part of a team or to be part of a larger project. Um, and that has always just stayed with me. So when I transitioned to suddenly do something that was for myself, that's actually why I created a company because I didn't want it to be all about me just being a speaker or just being a coach
Hmm.
or, having that singular vision. I wanted it to evolve and be a growth mechanism with the industry. So as things changed, it came forward, it'd be available to do that. And so the drive has always been there, I think. Um, and for me, if it's fun and it's fascinating and it's challenging, that's when it's the best.
Hmm.
And so, having the business was kind of like the next logical step for me to take that drive and energy and move it forward.
Got it. And speaking of, you said you encountered some challenges. What were some of the biggest challenges when starting a business?
Well, the first one is you give up a real paycheck. Um, you know,
Right.
uh, so that affects your family. That's not just you.
Hmm.
So there's things that you have to plan for. You also are suddenly singular. You're no longer part of a team. You're no longer part of an organization. If you see right now, we have the largest population of retirees beginning in our nation, and you also
Hmm.
have the largest group of people who are reinventing themselves because it's hard for them after having a long career and being part of something to going to just being an individual. I think we never realized this. For years, we've seen this happen with people who have been in long military careers. And then when they
Hmm.
leave the military, they just become a standard citizen, but they're no longer part of that large organization, that focus,
Right.
that drive, that vision that they've had for all those years. So I think now we're starting to see that with people. For me, it was definitely I need to reinvent not only what I'm doing, but also who I am, which is no longer attached to an institution or an organization, but doing something different. It's a challenge because you suddenly have to rethink your entire life and how you live it and what you do with it, how you're going to make up for your income. What are you doing to, get your business out there? The big question always sitting there is, are you going to be successful? And
Hmm.
sometimes you're not. It's a constant evolution. So you have to be prepared when you're going to start your business to put some planning into it and to recognize that you're not going to be likely a success overnight. You're not going to see lots of money rolling in the beginning, but it's the persistence that pays off and gets things moving forward. And it's having a plan to follow that keeps you on track when things get disrupted.
And for you, I know you always you have the end in mind, but when the pandemic happened, did you see that more as an opportunity, or did you see that as something that you had to shift your business entirely?
So because we were so new at that point, it really was just kind of like a aha moment where it was like, oh, this could either go horribly wrong or could
Hmm.
go horribly right. And so, starting to look at, because being in Arizona, the pandemic started on the East Coast and kind of rolled this direction. So we were
Hmm.
seeing that New York was shut down and,
Right, right.
things were starting to close up and all. It still hadn't hit here yet. That bought us some time because we kind of started to see how it unfolded, and we started to see
Right.
businesses closing. And on social media, we started seeing people talking about, oh my gosh, how am I going to deliver my business, or
Hmm.
how am I going to get access to this, or we started seeing companies that needed to have people trained because they were on deadline, either for funding or for projects or something. So it just kind of came together to start looking at that and assessing, okay, this is an opportunity if we do it
Hmm.
right, if we start to, reach out, if we start to say what we offer. So we started pushing things out that said, we're here, we're available. For as little as if you want to talk to us and try to just figure out where you're going, if you want to run your plan by us. We had people that hired us just to have us listen to what they thought they should do and give them pointers on whether that would work or not, and what else they might need to consider. All the way through to, okay, how quickly can we pick all this up and move it over here and put it online? So, it didn't start as an opportunity, but as we assessed what was going on, we realized it could be an opportunity. And that's where, at that time I had just a couple people on my team, but we sat and talked about, what if, how does
Hmm.
this work? How does this go? And we made it happen.
Yeah, it sounds like everything kind of serendipitously came together. Um, and you also mentioned that you have your own podcast as well. Um, I'd love to learn a little bit more about that, and if you can give our listeners what your podcast is, and why you personally started podcasting.
Sure. So we have a podcast called EdTech Speaks, and what that talks about is the intersection of business, education, and technology. So we look for guests that are, creating the next best widget. Maybe they already have something that's out there. Maybe they have a great service that combines all of those things. So we've had a variety of guests. It's really been kind of fun because you always tend to look at things at one level. If you offer something, that's all people see. And they don't realize
Hmm.
what it takes to get there. So we like to uncover the fact that things have business and technology and education in it. We've talked, for example, with uh, companies who provided Wi-Fi and hotspots during the pandemic, right before school shut down, but where we were getting close to it. We talked with a company that designed products so that you could see hotspots of people gathering on a
Wow.
campus. Because if you remember when the pandemic started, we didn't want everybody gathering, right? We didn't want
Right,
people
right.
in clusters. We wanted people separated. But being on a college campus, college students forget about that. So they actually devised it so you could look at this map on campus and at any time see where there were students starting to cluster. And then you could send personnel over to say, hey, you guys need to spread out a little more and such.
Hmm.
Um,
That's
again,
actually a
all
pretty good
towards
tool
the
to understand
pandemic and
where.
trying to,
I feel like that's a good tool to understand where to market stuff on campus. Because if those are where people are hanging out, you can just put certain things. I mean, it could be a tool that's not
sure.
used during the pandemic too. It sounds fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah. And at the time, it was all about student safety. How do we keep students safer? They've since evolved and they are using it for other things, but that was the
Hmm.
initial start of it. We've talked with people who do, certain types of software that really just fit bringing educators together, bringing students together, understanding business. Um, we've interviewed people who, have just designed tools that just help people in their everyday lives that
Hmm.
really again have just grown into the industry and spread out. So our goal was just to introduce people to a variety of things that fall in the ed tech space because we tend to not always understand what fits in there, and to also just showcase some of the ways that people are making an impact and a difference in the world. We've had people that we've interviewed from the UK, from Switzerland, from the Philippines, Singapore, as well as in the US and Canada. So we will continue doing that and bringing people just really interesting guests with products and services and just really showing that intersection because we think it's just so important for our listeners to understand where things are coming from and where things are going.
Fantastic. Yeah, I actually have a couple of people that come to mind that I think would be fantastic guests that I can connect you with and give you their contact and stuff after this. And yeah, me personally, I come
Excellent.
from a family of kind of educators. My mom was a professor at a university in Japan called Tohoku University, but she was just an English professor. And then my dad and my mom, they had a online language learning platform, English language learning platform targeted for Japanese students. And so I helped them with a couple things back a long time ago. But education has changed so much. And I remember when I was growing up, I would kind of focus on like how, in my view, like there's two, at least K-12 education, two different kinds of like how am I trying to say this? But like essentially like there's the Socratic way that you mentioned earlier, where it focuses and
Hmm.
targets more on the individual so they can develop and grow. So if they want to be an engineer, they can go be an engineer. If they want to be something that's more in art or entertainment, they can kind of go that route. And that's more like the Socratic, more of like the Scandinavian education system, which they're like consistently like top three. And then there's also the other end of the spectrum where I'm half Japanese. Japan and South Korea have like cram schools. They go to school like 220, 240 days a year. And their system is more memorize, regurgitate, but they still consistently get those top scores. Um, what what do you think the US is doing differently? Because right now, at least, I still think they're kind of geared towards the memorize, regurgitate method, but they are implementing Google Classroom and they are doing different things. But uh, do you see that right now, or is education, are they implementing these different technologies, or is it still kind of getting them a little bit longer? If that makes
I
sense.
think the difference is that we're seeing accreditation bodies starting to notice and wanting to adapt, because ultimately that's what really drives what schools do, right? You have to meet a certain goal to be accredited. There are certain objectives that have to be there. And so consequently, what are we going to do? We always said, well, you teach to the objective because then when you test the objective, you've learned the objective. Um,
Mhm.
and for a lot of years that worked. Now what we're recognizing is technology can teach you a lot of things in a lot of different ways and can create a great expansion of knowledge and learning far beyond what the classroom can do. We also recognize now that there are a lot of people that learn in a lot of different methods, and we retain information often better when it's hands on and we're actually,
Mhm.
uh, you know, submersed in it as opposed to just reading about it. If you read how to ski versus you actually ski down a mountain, it's quite different.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're hoping to go and change to. I think as accreditation changes and as schools start to really implement not only testing you for knowledge, but testing you for skill, I think we'll start to see a difference in it. We're seeing more and more schools utilize assessments now than ever before because they want to be able to show not the regurgitation. but where you were at the point when you started the program or the course and where you ended up at the end. So they want to show that scale of knowledge that you've built. And I think that's really important because they're not concerned about those finite points and if you can regurgitate them, but they really want to show that overall you've comprehensively learned knowledge in that
Hmm.
particular course or in that particular
Got it.
program. I think we're going to continue to see more of that.
Got it. And just here's to kind of swift into like kind of HR a little bit too when you're recruiting and you're hiring. I feel like there's a lot of people that can lie out about their credibility, lie on their resume, lie on their LinkedIn, etc. Uh, and how do you think that kind of like these companies can implement a system where they can, instead of looking at their resume, they can actually see the talent and understand it? How do you think that can be quantified?
Well, I think we're already starting to see it with the layers of interviews. So if you talk, particularly in the edtech industry, people are going through an average of 5 to 6 interviews to get hired at a company. Because the
Wow.
first 2 or 3 interviews, you're not actually talking to anybody at the company. You're still with an HR third party recruiter
Right.
who's really just trying to sort out who's coming in. So you think about that, and they're looking at one level of do you fit this. Then you're going into a next set of interviews where they're really talking more about the skill set.
Hmm.
And many companies now are doing testing in there or having you do projects. They're providing you with some initial materials to see how you adapt and work through that problem solving process. And then the third level of interviews is, are you a fit? Are you going to fit with the team? Fit has become very, very important to us because we are working so much as project based and team based, and we want to know that you can really work through those areas. So while we're interested in that second level of skills, we may allow you to come in with a little less skill if you're a good fit, and we'll take on the training to move you upward a little more. Um, it's become a much more comprehensive system in going through that. But I think what that also does is that allows us to catch you if you've fabricated or expanded what you have on your LinkedIn page, or
Hmm.
maybe what you've talked about, because obviously the proof isn't there when you start to work through things, when you start to talk through them. People can sense you're not as experienced in working with something as you profess to be. And so I think, the combination of those in that new way of interviewing is making that change from back in the day when you just submitted a resume and somebody read through it and said, oh yeah, you check all the boxes, we'll hire you.
Hmm.
And then, as you said, you get them in there and you're like, wow, this person really doesn't do what
Hmm.
I thought they could do, which we would then say, oh, they're not a good fit. It really wasn't about the fit. It was about the lack of skill set that we thought we'd hired. So I think the new process of interviewing, while it still has some bugs and not everyone is fully on board with it yet, but I do think it's providing a little more sense of balance, but it's also giving a much more holistic view, um, and still some human interaction to determine if this person is actually going to be what you need.
Got it. And I love the kind of the human interaction element. And I love to ask all my guests, just since it's such a trendy topic, and I know we're kind of on time, up on time, but what do you think? How do you think AI plays a picture in education and in just in general in business and in HR improving? What are your thoughts on it?
So I don't think AI is as evil as everyone, you know, professes it to be at the moment. I think we've been using AI in various ways for a long, long time now. We just weren't privy to understanding that's what it was. You'll talk to people who say they don't believe in AI, but they have Siri or they have Alexa sitting in their house and they're using it all the time. That's a form of AI. So, it's understanding what AI is going to do, and again, what the outcome is going to be, whether or not we can appreciate it and we can evolve it. I think it has a place in education because I think it can take on some of the things that are so task oriented that we pull teachers away from doing good teaching to do other just, things that really aren't of value. I think it enhances learning by being able to tap into knowledge and expertise that you can pull from there. There's a variety of ways that I think we'll be able to adopt it and to bring it in. I don't think it will replace people fully. There may be instances where, it can replace certain things. When you think about, we used to have people answer the phone when you call the company. Now you can oftentimes have an automated phone service that does that. So maybe it replaced that position, but it didn't replace that person because we moved that person into a new role. We needed something else as a result of adopting that. So I think it has value. I think it's here to stay. It's just going to have to mature and grow because right now it's still um, very infant style in the sense
Hmm.
of we've not taught it enough to grow where we want it to be. We're just
Hmm.
hoping it catches on as we're moving forward. So with some proactive work, I think we'll continue to see it adopted and in there, but I don't think it will be replacement value.
It's just funny because I see a lot of both teachers and employers. They see their students and they see their workers pretty much um, doing a lot of their tasks, assignments, mundane work, just 100% using AI. So it's super interesting to see it kind of rolling out in front of us. But Cher, it's a fantastic conversation. Is there any other anything else that you'd like to share? Any advice to first-time founders? Anything like that?
Absolutely. For first time founders, you really need to get a core group of people around you that can support you, that can advise you, that can challenge you. That really is what makes you successful, is having that core team that helps you just understand where you're going and how you're getting started and what you're doing next. So I always advise, pick those people that can be honest with you, that can support you, that you trust. You trust implicitly to be able to share information with them and to help you move that business forward. Once you get that core team in place, everything else starts to become tasks and objectives that you need to get done, but you've always got them to rely on, and that is just really, really important. I invite anyone that wants to chat further. Visit our website at www.downingedtech.com. There's a comment form on there. Fill it out, send me a note, and tell me that you'd love to talk more.
That sounds great, and I'll put all of that in the description. Cher, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.